Deep inside abandoned ghost towns, buried beneath the scorching sands of unforgiving deserts, and locked away in the climate-controlled vaults of the world's museums, lie physical remains that seem to defy human biology. For decades, explorers and archaeologists have stumbled upon skeletons and DNA fragments that stubbornly refuse to fit into our established evolutionary family tree. Today, we are going to embark on a journey through the strangest genetic anomalies ever unearthed. We will examine a microscopic 6-inch skeleton recovered from the Chilean desert. We'll look at the massive elongated skulls from Peru, unearth blonde-haired mummies in the dead heart of Asia, and investigate the viral alien bodies recently presented to the Mexican government. We are going to trace the path from wild, internet-fueled conspiracy theories directly to the sterile labs of modern geneticists. And by the very end, you will discover which one of these bizarre artifacts actually rewrote the biology textbooks and unveiled an entirely new hidden branch of humanity's family tree. Our journey begins in 2003. An artifact hunter named Oscar Munoz was scavenging through the ruins of La Noria, a desolate, abandoned nitrate mining town in Chile's Atacama Desert. It is a place completely stripped of life, baked by a relentless, punishing sun. While digging near the ruins of a local church, Munoz unearthed a white cloth pouch carefully tied with a purple ribbon. When he untied it, he froze. Lying inside was something that looked vaguely human, but its proportions were impossible. The entire skeleton was no longer than a standard ballpoint pen, just about 6 inches long. Yet it wasn't a fetus. The skeleton appeared fully formed. It had hard, calcified bones, fully developed teeth, and a bizarre, highly elongated skull that tapered into a conical dome at the top. Even more disturbing, a close inspection revealed that this creature possessed only 10 pairs of ribs. A healthy human being has 12. The artifact was so terrifying and unnatural that photographs of the entity, dubbed Ata, quickly leaked to the internet. The public verdict was absolute. People argued that this anatomy could not possibly belong to a terrestrial being. The missing ribs, the massive eye sockets, the domed head, and the microscopic size perfectly matched Hollywood's archetype of a gray alien. Experts claimed this was the pilot of a miniature spacecraft that had crashed in the desert. The conspiracy reached a boiling point until leading geneticists from Stanford University stepped in. They managed to extract pristine biological material directly from the bone marrow of the tiny mummy. Their DNA sequencing left no room for mysticism. The creature was human. Specifically, she was a female infant of South American descent. But how do we explain her terrifying appearance? A massive computer analysis of her genome revealed a tragic storm of over 60 severe genetic mutations. Many of these coding errors had never been documented in medical history. These catastrophic glitches targeted the genes responsible for collagen production and skeletal development. Her bones had aged and calcified at an exponentially accelerated rate, meaning this 6-inch skeleton possessed the bone density of a 6-year-old child. She was born with insurmountable physical trauma and likely never took a single breath. If the tiny Atacama mummy was the result of a tragic genetic accident, our next discoveries take us to anomalies that were created intentionally. In 1930, an American teenager exploring an abandoned copper mine in northern Mexico found a hidden alcove. Inside was a normal human skeleton lying next to a skull that looked like a prop from a science fiction movie. The back of the cranium was ballooned outward, resembling an inverted pear. The bone felt unnaturally thin, yet hard like plastic. The eye sockets were incredibly shallow and positioned far too low on the face. Decades later, a paranormal researcher acquired the artifact, famously dubbing it the Star Child skull. He toured the world, claiming the skull belonged to a human-alien hybrid, pointing to strange red fibers found inside the bone as proof of extraterrestrial biology. But when modern DNA sequencing finally caught up with the myth, the truth was sobering. Both the maternal and paternal DNA were entirely Native American. The bizarre shape of the head was the result of severe congenital hydrocephalus, a heartbreaking condition where cerebrospinal fluid builds up inside the skull of an infant. The immense fluid pressure inflates the soft cranium like a balloon, expanding the volume and pushing the eye sockets downward. And those alien red fibers? They were nothing more than a cheap chemical sealant the teenager had painted on the skull in the 1930s to keep it from crumbling. But what happens when entire populations have altered skulls? In 1928, Peruvian archaeologist Julio Tello made a discovery on the arid Paracas Peninsula that still fuels alternative history forums. He excavated a massive necropolis containing hundreds of remains. But it wasn't the mummies that shocked the world, it was their heads. The Paracas skulls were incredibly elongated, stretched so far backward that their cranial volume appeared 25% larger than a modern human's. Furthermore, on several of these massive skulls, researchers couldn't locate the sagittal suture, the zigzagging joint that connects the two parietal bones at the top of a human head. Alternative historians claimed these were an ancient race of off-world rulers, but when professional anthropologists took over, the mystery dissolved into a fascinating cultural reality. The ancient Paracas people practiced intentional artificial cranial deformation. To denote high social status, they would tightly bind the heads of their infants with cloth or compress them between wooden boards while the bones were still pliable. The increased bone weight was a natural biological response to the constant mechanical stress. And that missing suture? When infant bones are subjected to that much extreme pressure, they can fuse together so tightly that the visible line is completely erased. Artificial deformation explains the oddities in Peru. But what happens when an entire archaeological find looks entirely normal for Europe, yet is buried deep in the heart of a lifeless Asian wasteland, thousands of miles from where it belongs? In the center of Asia lies the Atacama Desert, a place so unforgiving that the local name translates to the place you enter but never leave. Deep beneath these sands, archaeologists unearthed something that completely broke our understanding of human migration. Buried beneath upside-down wooden boats were perfectly preserved human remains dating back 4,000 years. The preservation was so pristine that their long eyelashes were still intact. The most famous of these, dubbed the Beauty of Xiaohe, possessed blonde hair, a high nasal bridge, and distinctly Caucasian features. They were buried wearing heavy woolen cloaks woven in complex plaid patterns, with chunks of cheese around their necks as a snack for the afterlife. Finding blonde-haired people buried in wooden boats in a Chinese desert caused an absolute cultural shockwave. The leading theory was that they were a lost tribe of Europeans, perhaps early Celts who had made an impossible overland trek. The debate raged until 2021, when an international team of geneticists extracted DNA from the teeth of the oldest mummies. The results proved everyone wrong. These people hadn't migrated from anywhere. They were the direct, unmixed descendants of the ancient North Eurasians, a relic population from the last ice age that had largely vanished from the rest of the Earth. The Atacama Desert had acted as a perfect genetic quarantine. This group lived in small oases, farmed, and simply never mixed with surrounding populations for thousands of years. Their blonde hair and European features weren't a sign of travel. They were a biological time capsule, a snapshot of ancient human genetics perfectly frozen in the sand. A similar phenomenon occurred on the Canary Islands. When 15th century Spanish explorers arrived off the coast of Africa, they expected to find typical African tribes. Instead, they found the Guanches, a tribe of tall, light-skinned people, many with striking blue or gray eyes. Because they practiced complex mummification, conspiracy theorists claimed they were the survivors of Atlantis. Once again, DNA proved they were simply descendants of North African Berbers who became trapped on the islands centuries ago. Through a genetic phenomenon known as the founder effect, where a small, isolated population breeds only within itself, rare recessive traits like blue eyes quickly became the dominant norm. Science easily handles the myths of Atlantis and wandering Celts, but it is entirely different when a supposed alien anomaly is paraded directly in front of lawmakers. In late 2023, footage from the Mexican Congress went violently viral. Before a panel of politicians and international journalists, small wooden boxes were opened to reveal two chalk-white bodies. Standing roughly 2 feet tall, the beings possessed elongated heads and exactly 3 long fingers on each hand. They looked exactly like the aliens from pop culture. UFO enthusiasts testified under oath that these bodies were over 1,000 years old. They displayed X-rays showing metallic implants made of rare osmium and claimed that 30% of their DNA was completely unknown to terrestrial science. The internet lost its collective mind. Had a major world government finally admitted to first contact? The reality was a masterclass in deception, driven entirely by grave robbers looking to make a fortune. When scientists from Peru's Ministry of Culture conducted forensic analyses, the illusion collapsed. The creatures were modern, morbid dolls. The alien heads were actually the deteriorated skulls of llamas and alpacas, with the snouts broken off and mounted backward. Those famous 3-fingered hands were constructed from a random assortment of human child bones, glued together in completely the wrong order, meaning the joints possessed no actual mobility. The chalky white skin was just a thick layer of diatomaceous earth used to hide the seams of the glue. And that unknown alien DNA? It was nothing more than degraded genetic garbage, a messy soup of ancient bacteria, fungi, and random human contamination. While the world was distracted by plaster dolls in Mexico, a quiet team of scientists working in a freezing Siberian cave was decoding a genome that would legitimately turn the scientific world upside down, and this time it was absolutely real. In 2008, archaeologists excavating the Denisova cave in the Altai Mountains found a microscopic fragment of bone. It was just a piece of a pinky finger belonging to a young girl, roughly the size of a green pea. Assuming it belonged to a standard Neanderthal or an early modern human, they sent it off to the Max Planck Institute for a routine DNA check. Nobody expected a breakthrough. The scientific community believed the human family tree was relatively settled. There were Homo sapiens, there were Neanderthals, and that was it. But when the sequencing machine spat out the final code, the laboratory fell dead silent. The DNA inside that tiny, pea-sized bone did not match modern humans, and it did not match Neanderthals. It belonged to an entirely new, previously undiscovered species of highly intelligent human beings. They named them the Denisovans. This single pinky bone proved that our ancient Earth was a world straight out of a fantasy novel, a place where multiple, distinct species of advanced, intelligent humans walked the Earth at the exact same time. And the most beautiful part of this discovery is that the Denisovans didn't entirely vanish. They interbred with our ancestors, and their genetic code lives on today. If you look at the modern populations living on the Tibetan Plateau, their unique, superhuman ability to breathe easily at crushing altitudes where the rest of us would suffocate is driven by the EPAS1 gene, a direct genetic gift inherited from the Denisovans. We have traveled a long and incredible path today. We uncovered the tragic medical reality of the tiny Atacama girl. We stripped the mysticism away from the towering skulls of Peru. We found an Ice Age time capsule in the deserts of China, exposed a massive congressional hoax, and finally touched the remnants of an entirely new human species in a freezing Siberian cave. It is human nature to look at something strange or frightening and immediately search the stars for an answer. We desperately want to believe that the ultimate mysteries lie out there in the dark of space. But time and time again, the rigors of science prove that our own planet and our own biological history is vastly more complex, bizarre, and wonderful than any science fiction script. Perhaps we don't need to keep staring into the night sky to find other forms of intelligent life. Sometimes we just need to look down into the dust of ancient caves or peer through the lens of a microscope, because the most profound secrets of the universe have been hiding in our own blood all along.